Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. You know, on our first episode of American Potential, we had Americans for Prosperity Iowa State Director Drew Klein, and he came on to talk about an Iowa barber who ran into a barrier, a government-imposed barrier, based on a definition. William Burt wanted to open a mobile barbershop called Cut Kings and to help serve the underserved in his community. Folks who couldn't travel to a traditional barbershop. And during this business planning process, he hit a barrier. He found out that due to a definition of a barber shop, he couldn't open a mobile barber shop, as Iowa law required barber shops to be an actual building, brick and mortar. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. But let's back up and tell you a little bit more of William's story. William had 2 kids at a young age, and he provided for them by dealing drugs, which led him to being in and out of prison. Now, William's turning point came during a visit from his son, when his son said to him, "Dad, if family is your number one priority, then you'd be here with us and you wouldn't be in prison." Well, William started to think of ways to stay out of prison, so he started to cut hair. What he discovered was he liked cutting hair because he saw how it lifted a person's spirit, and it made a connection between him, some of the inmates, as well. When he was released from prison in 2008, he went on to graduate from barber school. And William then saw a need in his community, and he wanted to be able to go and serve those who couldn't travel to a traditional brick and mortar barbershop. And during the business planning process, he learned that a mobile barbershop was prohibited by state law, and he thought this was the end of his dream. Americans for Prosperity Iowa found out about William's story. They reached out to see if they could work together. And after 2.5 years of working with lawmakers, the definition of a barbershop was finally changed. William was able to serve his community with his mobile barbershop. And there's one more part of William's story that involves a phone call, but I'm going to let William talk more about that call. William now sits on the Iowa Board of Barbering. He operates a nonprofit, and he's still cutting hair, and he's still connecting with people. On today's podcast, we have William Burt to tell this incredibly inspiring story and get an update on how Cut Kings is doing. William, thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure so far.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, this is such an amazing story. If anyone listens to this podcast, our very first episode was Drew Klein, the Iowa State Director for Americans for Prosperity, talking about your story. Yes, so I'm so excited to have you here and have you tell your story.
Yes.
First of all, let's go back a little bit, because I heard you talking earlier today, and you said something that I thought was kind of incredible. Like, everybody listens to this story, they find it fascinating, but you lived, this is your life. Mm-hmm. You lived this. So it took you a while to understand the significance of your story and how it may relate to other people, right?
Yes. What I said was, like, talking to other people about my story, it has an impact beyond what I could originally see. It took a minute, or it took a while for my story to grow on me and for me to see
right
how much of an impact that I make on others. And like you said, I live this lifestyle. Like, every day I wake up, I do the same, go through the same motions, same routine. So it didn't it didn't resonate right away how much of an impact it makes throughout, the country, not just Iowa, but, I'm here in Washington, D.C. to tell my story. So
Right. And by the way, they sandwich me. I have a terrible job on this podcast. They sandwich me with my puny voice in between, the guy that announces at the Super Bowl and the velvety tones of William Burt on this episode. So, maybe they should just give the job to you, William. Do you cut hair and do podcasts?
I would love to, but I think you got the perfect voice. You sound pretty good.
All right. Thank you. So let's talk about maybe your early life.
Yes,
you made some bad decisions, some tough choices in life,
yes.
Led to kind of the tough streets and then to prison.
Yeah. I grew up, my mom moved my family or our family from Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, grew up in Salis with my grandfather. 1992, my mom decided we were relocating, better opportunities in Waterloo, Iowa, she said. So we ended up in Waterloo, and within months, the neighborhood I moved into, activities that were going on in the neighborhood, the kids were around my age, and for some reason I was inspired by the negativity that was on the block. And I ended up out there, that was a goal eventually to get out there. I seen the guys, making money on a daily basis. And that became a goal of mine to get out there. Why? I couldn't tell you, but yeah, it led me down a dark, windy road where I was in and out of the juvenile facilities as a young adult. And it transgressed into me going to prison 4 times.
Was there, as you think back on that, did you just go astray? It seems like there's always, as I talk to you, there's a kindness to you. There's a goodness to you. Was that always inside of you? What, during that time, that rougher patch in your life, was there always that goodness in there, or did you have to rediscover that?
No, I think I'm still the same person. I was the same kid I was. I grew into, and I evolved into the same adult. Just now I would say I see through clear eyes. I understand life a little bit better, and I try to do more good than my past times. Like, I was always of good character. I'll say it that way.
Right.
I was never the bad guy. I wasn't the guy that was going to break in your house and steal your things.
Where'd you get that from? Your mom?
Yes, my mom.
Your mom?
Yeah.
How about, are you a person of faith?
I am. I'm a Christian. Yes.
Yeah. So those things kind of anchored you, I suppose, through the tougher times?
They were instilled. Like, my mom instilled, going to church and just being of moral character, values. All of that was instilled early on as a kid. And I think I kind of just pushed it to the side during that duration of my life. And through visits and letters, my mom would always remind me of who she raised me to be. Mm-hmm. And up until recent years, I would constantly hear, like, I don't know, what you're trying to be or who you're trying to be, but I wish you'd just be the kid that I raised you.
Mm-hmm. I bet you that's a proud mom now, today, huh?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Much more so now than then or than ever, but yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And, a mother's love gets through an awful lot, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So as you're going through this, you're in prison, and to talk about the connection that you found in barbering.
The thing I like about barbering is it showed me that it was bigger than just cutting hair. Like, it allowed me to interact with, like you said, the inmates that I would never have talked to. Like, just having a chair open for them to sit in and get a haircut in prison. I watched it do wonders for people. You may have a visit coming the following day, and I'm freshening these guys up for visits, for photos. Mm-hmm. And during that haircut or that opportune time with them, I was able to build connections, hear their stories, tell my stories, and gain a little knowledge that I could potentially, or that I did potentially use over the years to build me into the person that I am now.
you got to understand, I've never been to prison. So what do you talk to about it, about with an inmate when you're cutting their hair?
That all depends on who you're talking to. Some of the guys still would have that negative mind state and kind of take you back into criminality, but a lot of the guys would also have good, wholesome conversations, like church services. I was a regular attendee of church while in prison, just trying to dig deep and find myself, find my way into, being a better person, being who I am today. Like I look forward, I wake up looking forward to making progression these days.
Yeah.
Like,
and you could, did you use it as an opportunity as you're talking to someone that, if you saw that they were positive, did you use this as a way to kind of maybe connect with them and maybe help them?
Yes, for sure. I tended to drift towards those guys that had more of the positive mindset because my goal was to get home as soon as possible. Like I never was a guy that wants to go and cause more trouble for myself. I didn't pick fights. I didn't get many write-ups. In fact, I may have gone the entire time with one write-up, out of all the times I went in. I went 4 times, and I probably had one write-up out of the 4 trips in there. So I was, again, always of moral character. I had a separate lifestyle that I would live after getting out, like drug dealing and just running the streets and doing things that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah. In total, how long were you in prison?
My longest stay was 3 years, 35 months, and then I did a second stay, 2 years, and in between those 2 big stays, my probation was violated, and Iowa has this, or did then, had a program called the Violators Program. And the first time I violated, and they sent me to that program, it was for 60 days, and then the second time, it was for 6 months. But it was supposed to be like a deterrence, a place that you could go do some criminal thinking type of treatment programs. It offered different treatment programs that allowed me to think about the behavior that brought me back, and it was, again, supposed to be a deterrent. And unless you want to be something different or be a better person or change your ways, then it's not going to happen. I came across those roads when, like you said in the introduction, during a visit with my family and my son, we was just having a general conversation, and my mom was talking about my priorities and what my number, how had I rearranged them. And I told her, well, my number one priority is my family.
Right.
And my son kind of interjected like that. Basically, that's not true, because if, like you said, if we were your number one priority, then you would be home with us and not sitting.
How old was your son when he said that?
12.
And that was like the profound moment.
Pretty much. He put something on my heart that still tugs at it today, because he's 27 today, and I, again, have a 12-year-old that I have custody of, and I'm like constantly molding his mindset on a daily basis, because like my oldest son, he has that same potential. My oldest son he's my role model, like my inspiration. So, and my youngest son has the same potential. So I'm always shaping, not so much trying to take away his character or his personality, but giving him different avenues and roadmaps that he can follow. Because I tell him every day, I wish I was as lucky as you. Like, you literally have a personal tour guide through life. Like, anything you think you've been through, I've done. And anything that you can see yourself going through, I've done. And probably stuff that you don't. The world is vast out there, and at 12 years old, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. So just having those conversations with him.
Right. So that shaped you. I mean, you're a better father today because of what you went through, probably for going to prison, spending that time away, for your older son saying that to you. I mean, that shaped you into a better person, probably a better Christian, right?
Yes. And
a better father.
Yeah. It again, today it makes me think, like, all the time. I think about like what was he feeling? Like he literally had the audacity to stop my words and say what he said to me. So it's like, what mindset was he in as a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
And how far ahead of himself he was then.
Yeah.
And I think about the young man he's grown into today. Like, he's so far ahead of the average 27-year-old that I know, just general 27 years old that I know, that he's like light years ahead of him. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to put him out there like that, because he'll hear it and be like, Dad, why did you say that? But it's seriously, at 27, he's been at his job for probably 7 years, and he owns his own house. And it's just so much he's done in those short years that I still haven't accomplished.
Yeah. Well, he still has the courage that he had when he was a young boy to tell you that, Dad, you better straighten up, right?
All the time. He often tells me, like, if I'm having an issue, like, I like to think out or think through what I'm going to say, because I can be very confrontational. So I often call him and say, hey, I'm having this problem, and I want to confront this person, or I want to address it. How does this sound? And he's like, no, you can't say it. So he often helps, and he's still shaping. And
yeah, that's awesome. What a great relationship to have, and shaped out of the fire of what you went through, really.
Right.
So, okay, so that moment really changed your frame of mind, right? About, man, I do have to make this my priority, and I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of prison. And so this connection that you had with folks as you were becoming a barber and you were cutting hair, led you, that and the conversation led you to once you got out, say, I'm not going back, right? Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that easy. I would like to say that conversation kept me out, but for probably a year or two, maybe 2 years, I still struggled with the person I wanted to become and the person that I was.
What's the struggle? Describe that to me. What's the struggle?
Just going back to the streets, going back to drug dealing.
What was the allure of that? Was it
the money?
The money?
Being lazy, not really wanting to work. Like, I've held down my barbering, been in barbering for 12 years. So for 12 years, I've worked. And prior to that, I bet you my longest job I held was 7 months. Not even a year at one job. So just, I don't know, the lazy thought process of, I'm gonna get the easy money. I'm gonna do what's easy. I'm have all of this money without really having to work for it. Was my thought process.
So did you ever, like, was there just a moment where it kind of dawned on you, or was it a process that I'm just not going to do that because I risk losing all the things that I love? Was it a moment, or was it a process to get to that? It
was definitely a moment. I in 2012, I was arrested again for drug dealing. Mm-hmm. And just as you said, I seen my whole life flash in front of me.
And this was after your son had that conversation with you, or before?
Yeah, he had we had this conversation in 2007. I was released a few months later, 2008. So 12, again, I came home. I struggled with doing what was right and having one foot on the line, kind of like straddling the fence is what I was trying to do. But 2012, that wall came crashing down on me again. And at that point, it literally scared me, because I could be still sitting in prison today. Mm-hmm. And God chose not to put me there. So I was blessed to be able to, for one, have enough money to hire a legal team. Even though it was drug dealing money, I was able to hire a legal team that kept me out. And I basically had to reiterate that promise to my son. We had to have that conversation again. My mom, I let everybody down.
Right.
So since 2012, I've been literally walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. And, we haven't even gotten to to the meat of this story, but I thought it was important to go through background.
I'm about to say, you got to have a background.
Yeah.
You got to have a background. So I don't mind. There's no secrets. No secrets in the sauce.
Well, and listen, it's good that there's no secrets, because this is for a lot of people. I mean, this is a life that many people have lived and may be right in the middle of living that same life.
Correct.
And this maybe speaks to them.
Right.
So, okay, so you get out and you're a barber and you're working, right? And you come up with this idea. I'm intrigued by going through all of that. You never lost your sort of entrepreneurial spirit somehow. You decided that I'm going to come up with this good idea, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what'd you come up with?
Well, I always, even as a drug dealer, I always viewed myself as an entrepreneur, because I felt like at that point I was still running a company. It just happened to be an illegal company.
Right.
But 2012, I graduated from barber school. I started at a local barbershop in Waterloo, Gray's Barbershop, and I want to shout out Mr. Gray for even giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I walked in on day one, and it was a middle chair open between two coworkers. One had been there 16 years. The other one had like 6-7 years in. And here I was with 0 days. So I had to figure out or find ways to build clientele in the midst of these guys who had decades plus in,
Sure.
So at the time I was going to UNI, which is the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where I was studying leisure, youth, and human services for a bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. And I started right away, day one, creating promotional materials, cards, flyers, hanging them on the wall, handing out cards, just introducing myself to people.
Right.
Because I would regularly sit days on end and maybe cut 2-3 people's hair and watch these guys do all the work. So
as you're telling me this, though, it would seem to me it would have been easier to deal drugs. I mean, wasn't this a lot harder to break into this business?
It was much easier to deal drugs, but I'd reached that crossing point to where I could no longer risk my freedom. Like, to me, right now, today, I'd rather struggle and be broke, so to speak, than to go out and risk my freedom and make thousands of dollars in a matter of minutes.
So you struggled through finding this legal way to do it, and the motivator was your freedom and being with your family.
Well, by the time I decided to go to barber college, it was like a natural for me. So I'd cut hair on 2 separate occasions in prisons for a total of probably 4 years. So at the point that I decided to go to barber college, I was pretty good at what I could do. So that part wasn't a struggle. The struggle was getting the mindset that anything easy doesn't last long. Mm-hmm. And it proved to me time after time after time, like I would sell drugs for a year or two, get in trouble, and be gone for a year or two. So that revolving door, it just played out with me. Mm-hmm. So the struggle was just getting past that mindset and being able to go to barber college, complete barber college, obtain a barber's degree, obtain a bachelor's degree, and then go on for my master's degree. So just being able to get myself into a new mind state to progress instead of going back through the same cycles again.
Right. Okay. So how'd you come up with the idea of the mobile barbershop?
Just thinking, and I had to separate myself. Like I wasn't busy enough in my mind, and then just the idea of being just a traditional barber at the time wasn't sitting well with me. I wanted to figure out other ways to innovate what we currently do as barbers on a daily basis. So I did a little research and seen that other states had this, this model of mobile barbering going on, and I tried to mimic it in the state of Iowa. Actually, I did. I didn't try.
Yeah.
But along that journey is where I discovered that it wasn't legal to be a mobile barber.
Yeah, and I heard you say it's the first time you'd ever found a legal way to do it, and then the government told you that's not going to work.
Yes, the first real and legal idea I ever had, they shut me down right away.
They shut you down right away. That's a government barrier,
right?
Government imposed barrier when they do that. I want to jump or move forward on that, but I have to go back. You talked about being an innovator, and I think people who haven't been to prison don't necessarily view people in prison as people who are innovators, free enterprise, free market thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Are they, or were you unusual in that?
No. I met some of the most talented individuals inside them prison walls than I've ever met. Like, you wouldn't believe how many doctors or lawyers or artists, the list goes on of people that you will meet inside those walls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, guys can sit and look at you and draw an identical portrait or take a picture that you have in your photo album and do an identical, picture to send home to your family members.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like some of the most talented guys I've literally ever met in my life are inside those walls.
Yeah, and I think that's fascinating to people who've never been inside the walls of a prison. I think that's a fascinating thing. Is I always look at things and I think, man, wouldn't it just be easier to be like, earn an honest living
Mm-hmm.
and not risk going to prison? And the answer is yes. but I mean, it's a foreign thing, I think, to a lot of people to see that as a concept.
Again, once you're in that mind state, it's definitely easier, but depending on your upbringing, like a lot of guys that are in prison, they come up in communities and areas where they're poor, opportunities aren't really there, or, just it's several different reasons why a person could be in prison. And I'm not trying to make an excuse, but there are many barriers and avenues that lead you to prison.
Yeah. And everybody makes choices, right in life. And
Exactly.
some make good choices, some make bad choices. Everybody makes bad choices at some point. But,
Yes.
Okay, so you got this idea for the mobile barber shop, and then the government tells you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You get a letter basically saying you can't do it, or how did that come about?
I was working with a young lady at the small business office for the University of Northern Iowa, and once telling her my idea, she was like, well, we have to put it on paper. If you're trying to get any kind of bank assistance or any kind of funding or grants for it, people are going to want to see your idea on paper in the form of a business plan. And we started to work towards, getting a business plan together. And somehow, some way, I don't know if she did her personal research on it to see. She said she thought it was interesting that no one had done this before. Mm-hmm. And she kept asking me, well, why are you the first one to do it? And I'm like, I don't know. I just, maybe I'm, the guy that thought of it. And
I'm just that smart.
Yeah, I want to bring it to fruition. But through an email, she was like, hey, I figured out why no one has done this before. She was like, you should probably, in so many words, stop what you're doing. You're wasting your money. Because it's illegal. You're not going to be able to use this thing. And I was already, even with the business plan was like an afterthought. Because I had already purchased the vehicle.
Right.
I'd already started the build out. And I began working with this young lady so that if need be, once, it was done, being built, I needed funding or anything for it, I would have this paperwork that I could submit and say, hey, this is what I have, here it is on paper. Just try to make life easier later on for me is what she suggested. But my mind was made up. Like, I had the money at the time to purchase a vehicle and complete the build out 100%. And midways through is when, I got the email saying, shut the operation down. It's illegal.
This is where most people stop. right? When they're told, well, you just can't do that. That's where they stop. And this is really what this show is all about. People who don't stop and who say, well, that's just not right. That's a barrier what is the purpose of the barrier, right? What are you imposing this upon me and stopping me from making a living or doing what I want to do? And most people just stop there. What was it inside of you that made you say, I'm not going to just accept that it's illegal?
For one, I as I was telling the onboarding crew this morning, I would never consider myself a quitter.
Right.
If I make plans or if I see something that I want, I'm usually going to go after it, and I'm going to go after it until I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But second thought is what you said earlier. It's the first legal idea that I've had, and you're going to tell me that I can't do it? So in my mindset, what are you trying to do?
Right.
I'm already a barber. I'm licensed through the state of Iowa. The only difference is my barbershop will now move from location to location versus me being on the same corner for day after day.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just, in your mind, I'm not going to take no for an answer.
I wasn't taking no for an answer.
I'm gonna do this. So then you get hooked up. Well, you tell your story. Was it a news story that was done about you, or how did the video come about?
The video was my idea. Where just talking with other people in the barbershop about what I was trying to do and why I couldn't do it. A couple clients or friends suggested first we start with a petition.
Mm-hmm.
So I drew up this. I think it was on change.org or something like that. We drew up a petition, and within no time had over 1,000 signatures saying, we support this mission.
Right.
And that led me to talking to another friend who did local videos, she's a videographer, and she helped me put together like a 59 seconds. It had to be long enough so we could put it on Instagram, Facebook, or short enough, I should say. But it was about 59, 60 seconds max that kind of told the story from start to finish, from my mind to actually being a project, how it came about. And that video got over 40,000 views in less than a month. And that's where Americans for Prosperity come in. I received a phone call from Tyler Rager, who's become more than a business partner or prospect. He's a friend, good friend at that. We talk all the time, but he his phone call out the blue was just like, hey, my name is Tyler Rager. I work for Americans for Prosperity, and I came across your story. It was before the guys from D.C. did the 12-minute documentary.
Right.
So this couple years before. But the small 59 seconds got the attention of Americans for Prosperity, and from that day forward, it was a journey. It was a journey, but it was one that I would say I enjoy. I really was, when it comes to knowledge, I was young. Like I didn't understand anything that I was about to go through. I've never been a political person, and just to be able to have someone to mold my mindset and walk me by the hand, hand in hand per se,
right,
through the entire journey was a blessing.
Yeah, it's a different world, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Had you ever even been to the Iowa Capitol before? Never. And you probably never dreamed that you would go and be a part of that process.
Never.
Yeah. So how were you received at first?
It was like the doors was being closed in my face. Like a mobile barbershop is like people didn't understand the concept of it. Like why do we need a mobile barbershop is how I felt. One line in the barbering law outlawed the entire concept of a mobile barbershop. And I think that line said something like a barbershop is a brick and mortar, and not one on wheels. That wasn't in there, but the brick and mortar kind of did. It took the concept of a barbershop being one on wheels. Mm-hmm. It took it out the equation.
Yeah, and you were doing this. You started out doing it for you, but at what point did you realize, hey, this is also holding other people back too? I mean, was that ever, or were you just kind of charging ahead to go after your idea?
The entire concept was for clients that were coming into the barbershop. Some clients, family members pushed them in wheelchairs. And then around this time, we were getting phone calls to the shop phone just asking, hey, something like my father just had a stroke and they're right now bedridden or wheelchair bound, and we're not able to get them in and out, cars in the house right now. So is there anyone that'd be willing to come out, and do the haircut here at home, and we'll compensate you? And just the amount of calls and me taking those kind of, jobs, because my other coworkers, they had time in and they had built up clientele on top of clientele. So they really didn't need to take jobs outside of the barbershop. But me being the new guy, I was trying to build as much clientele and network as much as I could. So taking those jobs, I realized that I was losing more equipment, leaving behind capes or combs or, clipper attachments. Just every other place I went, I was leaving stuff behind. So it got to a point to where, all right, at this rate, I'm going to not have equipment. So let me put my brain, to thought. And that's where it was born. It's like, I can take the experience to these guys, create a novelty on wheels, so to speak, to where they're not just getting their haircuts in their bedrooms or in the kitchen. We can wheel them out, and into an actual barbershop setting. Right.
And so you worked with Americans for Prosperity and the team in Iowa, and you kind of crafted a plan to get this through the legislature, this piece of legislation that would change the law. Very small change, but very significant change. Mm-hmm. And tell us, how long did that take?
From start to finish, it was about 2.5 years. And
wow.
Again, I was just following the lead. I had no idea. I wanted to be confrontational because, like I said, over the years, I've been known to be a person with logic, but I got to get down to the finite details. I want to know why. So, and the way I had planned on going about it was, you're going to have to come out and cite me, ticket me to a point to where we end up in court, and someone has to tell me why this is not legal. I'm not just accepting I can't use an investment, a project that I've invested in.
Yeah.
And just talking to Tyler about it, a couple months in, and me still having this same mentality, I can't let these guys keep making, they're making me sit around. And Tyler just really broke it down to the last compound is listen, it may hurt or it may not feel right that you can't use it at the moment, but these same guys that you're looking to tee off right now, we're going to need them down the road. So let's just do what it takes. We didn't know that it would take 2.5 years. We was hoping it would go through in the first session, and it didn't, just because we had, some kickback. Legislators didn't want to hear it. Some didn't want to deal with it. And it just was a process of winning people over.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that. But today I feel like it made me a better person. I'm more of a problem solver today than I've ever been.
William, men and women are free today in America because of people like you, who didn't just say, oh, okay, I'll just go lay down and take it, right? I mean, people who challenge the system and, is this really right? I mean, there are other people who maybe want to do what you're doing, and they're not free to do that in Iowa unless this law passes. So, first of all, thank you for being one of those people that stand up because the freedom and liberty that other people have is because people like you sacrificed and stayed the course and fought the fight.
Thank you for the compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you get all this done, the bill, and actually the governor kind of got on board. Governor Kim Reynolds got on board, and invited you to, was it the State of the State address kind of thing, or
2020 condition of the state?
Okay. Condition of the state address. Introduced you. You were up in the gallery, I guess, or
way out of my comfort zone, but definitely. Yeah, that was a big moment for me. Like, her doing that, like, she literally changed the trajectory of the entire, goal to get it legalized. Like, up until that point, we were meeting all opposition. And the one statement that she said, which I think is a good idea, by the way, like, overnight, my phone ringing off the hook. Tyler's calling me like, hey, this legislator just called. This person just called, and I think now we're getting some traction. So overnight, literally, with Governor Kim Reynolds making that one statement, changed the trajectory of everything. And again, thank you, Governor.
Yeah.
But
well, and that's the power of someone, of an elected official who can be a champion and who sees, who is there, I think, to help people overcome barriers and things like that. And certainly she did that. And that's great. So the bill passes. She signs it into law. You were there when she signed it into law?
Yeah, front row and center. Front
row and center. Did you get a pen?
I did.
She gave you a pen.
I got a pen and the original document, I want to say.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. For a guy that was headed down the wrong road, was in and out of prison, to getting a law signed that was your idea, a pen that was used to sign that bill into law from the governor, and the actual original document.
So the crazy thing about this whole law signing thing, if you watch the video, there's like 50 pens laying there. And she had to literally use one pen after another pen. Yeah. So we went through all of the pens that were laying there to sign that document. I thought it was crazy, but unique. So I got one of however many pens.
One of 50 pens. Yeah. Well, we'll just say it was the most important one. Wasn't
it was the one. Yeah.
Okay, so that happened, and this is the icing on the cake. And I know it's the part that you seem to get more emotional about than the others. But was it Drew who somebody came to you and said, "Hey, you've done all of this stuff. Can you even vote, William?" Who came and asked you that?
Drew. And at the time, I honestly, again, I've never been into politics.
Yeah.
Getting my voting rights back was not a thing to me. I didn't care at all. But
in Iowa, if you're a felon,
you can't vote.
You can't vote.
Until that was like once she gave them back to me, it's like the floodgates open for the rest of the felons. So now it's a thing. You got to fill out a short form as a felon to get the rights back, but now it's a thing that you can't.
So Drew asked you, and you said no.
I didn't say no.
Oh, you didn't say no?
Nope. He suggested, he was like, you've gone through all of this. If anyone deserves to have their rights back, it's you. So why don't you fill out the paperwork? And they got the paperwork out. We was at the Capitol building that day. So he went in and got the paperwork out of the governor's office somewhere, disappeared, came back with the paper, and I filled it out. It literally probably took me 3 or 4 minutes. And a couple of weeks later, I get this phone call.
And now, wait, I have to interject here because Drew tells it like this. The phone's ringing, and was Drew there with you when the phone was ringing?
Yeah, we was filming the documentary.
Right.
And they set it up for this to happen.
And they had a camera on the governor, too.
Yep.
Making the call, and they had a camera on you.
Yep.
And the phone's ringing, and you wouldn't answer the phone.
Oblivious to me. It was a number that I did not, and it wasn't saved. And we're in the middle of.
You're kind of a big shot now. You got this law pass. Who you're going to answer?
I don't know who it is. Yeah, I don't know who it is. It's not a saved number. I'm in the middle of a filming session, so at that time it wasn't important to me.
Sure.
And Drew is like, William, answer the phone. I'm like, for what? I don't know who's calling. He's like, answer the phone. So I answered the phone, and that's why I was surprised like that, because she said it's Governor Kim Reynolds. And I'm like, oh, Governor Kim Reynolds.
Do you want your pen back?
Right, right. No, have we signed the bill yet? I'm not for sure if we hadn't signed yet. Okay. I think this was in a couple months before the bill signing. But
gotcha.
Yeah, so I wasn't looking to answer the phone again.
Yeah.
And like I told them, you guys could have warned me, because the whole the emotional deal in that scene erupted because I thought of myself as this, like a guy that's been to prison 4 times and ex-con, whatever tagline that they put on people like myself, that's how I vision myself. And then to be receiving a phone call from the head of the state.
See, and that's gone. It's wiped away.
It blew my mind. Like, this lady is calling me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I still can't watch the documentary without getting moved.
Yeah, most people can't. And I would encourage folks, if you just on YouTube, I mean, people can go to YouTube. You can go to YouTube and you can watch the video. In fact, we'll put a link in the podcast up to that video. So if people want to watch the video, you want to see William, and hear who's behind his velvety tones of his voice, you can do that. So that was a pretty cool moment. I mean, it's a cool moment for me to watch. I think people who watched the video saw it. You got emotional, right? In fact, you said, I can't believe you guys are recording me while I'm crying.
Right. I got a film crew standing here with tears in my eyes, or recording me with tears in my eyes. Yeah, that was an emotional moment. Like, simply, not because she was giving me my rights back. It's the idea of me being a little guy, and I got the head of the state. After all I've been through, she's excused that to say, hey, you're now a citizen of Iowa again. Yeah, that's such a great story, and thank you to Governor Kim Reynolds for doing that, and proudly doing it. I mean, she didn't have to be pushed very hard to do it, from what I understand. I think she took a liking to you. It seems that way. I was able to meet her and have a couple conversations, several different occasions. So, yeah, I would say definitely a good person.
Yeah. So now, let's tell us what's happened since then. Like, now you have a nonprofit. You're doing great things. You got into this to help people in your community. It wasn't really totally about you and finding a path and being an entrepreneur. It was really about helping your community when you started this whole trip, right? And now you're doing that through your nonprofit.
Yes, barbering in itself, I seen as a way to network, get to know others. Because as a barber, we are like counselors. We can sometimes play the role of a doctor, head doctor, but like just that whole perception of what barbering means, it keeps me going every day. Like, a lot of guys don't sit in my chair because I'm the best barber in town. It's a relationship that we've built over the years. So that in itself keeps me true and honest to what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. So, but you use this, the mobile barber service you go out and you cut kids' hair sometimes?
Yeah, I would like to be busier than what I am. Like you said, I started the nonprofit, which I put it together to to be able to reach out to the community for, donations or grants, and to be able to accept those donations and grants and allow the donors to write it off. But in 2021, I opened up my own barbershop. So during all of this time, my mindset was kind of to keep growing, just keep elevating to the next level. And that's where the nonprofit come from. The idea of the nonprofit, it would allow me to stay true to my mission, like to be able to give back to my community, and maybe not to give out a completely free haircut, but an inexpensive one, one of lower cost. You know, I really can't see myself charging, you know, a veteran or someone who's sick and shut in the amount of dollars that it would take to operate a mobile barbershop. Because you would have to imagine if I'm driving this vehicle to your job or to your house or your organization, wherever it is that the job is, it's going to cost more money than coming to a barbershop because there's overhead, there's gas, there's, you know, all of these factors that goes into that one haircut. So I couldn't see myself charging, you know, the underserved population that I was looking to seek a full amount of what it actually takes. So the idea of creating the nonprofit so I could receive or ask for donations to help forward some of these missions. Yeah.
So looking back on this and the road that you've traveled, who do you think's most proud of you? You think it's your mom, your son, or God?
Of course, I'm going to say God.
Right.
But just a half a step under that, I think my entire family is. Like, the video affects my grandson. I have a 10-year-old grandson, a granddaughter. And at the time, she was probably 4, but she's played that video for everybody she's come in contact.
She's half the watches on YouTube, huh?
She's half the and, you know, and I probably still got the text message in my phone, but my grandson sent me a text message less than a week ago saying, I just watched this video again, Papa, and it still made me cry. So it's like the effect is rippling. You know, it goes on. Like, my mom is definitely proud. My son, he's a hard guy. He ain't going to tell me, but I know he is as well. Just being able to watch me get a second chance with my 12-year-old. Like, you know, my mom practically raised my older kids. You know, I played a role when I was there, but it's like every other year I'm in prison for a couple of years. So
yeah,
I didn't really get the experience that I'm getting. No, I didn't get the experience with my older kids that I'm getting now with my 12-year-old.
Yeah.
I've literally had custody of him since he was like 9 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to, I don't know, be that parent that's there for every step of the way. Like, that's priceless.
Yeah.
Like, that makes me prouder than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it should. It should. I mean, you know, what a hero. I mean, you're a hero. I'm sorry. I hate to say that. You probably don't like the tag or whatever, but you are. I mean, I think, again, the point is we have freedom in America because of people who stand. I mean, obviously because of soldiers who fight for our freedom and our liberty. And, you know, for lots of folks throughout history. But it also takes citizens who stand up with the courage to stand up and say, you know, this just isn't right. And, you know, to me, it doesn't matter who that is, you know, whether it's, you know, Rosa Parks on a bus or whether it's someone like you who's like, no, I'm just not going to take that as the answer.
Right.
I'm not going to let government tell me no. I finally found something that's legal.
Right.
I'm trying to make a living here, and I'm just not going to accept it.
Right. So
you're going to have to accept the tag of hero, whether you like it or not.
Hero that's a big title.
That's a big title.
That's a big title. I'm just a common guy, man. I just try to, again, live by a set of principles, morals, and values, and pass them on down to my children, my grandkids. You know, just share my visions, my thoughts. And they may not always be right, but I've been through enough. I've done enough wrong that I can share the experience in hopes that it'll keep these guys on the right path. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yes, sir.
William. It was awesome. And now I'm going to get a lot of downloads of this podcast just from your grandkids, right?
I hope so. They need to hear it. They need the inspiration.
They do. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell the story. This is one of the great stories that I've heard through our work at Americans for Prosperity. And so thanks for taking the time and for letting us partner with you.
Thank you for having me out, giving me another opportunity to put my voice out so others can hear my story. And American Potential, that's a great title, by the way.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential in our country.
That's a great title.
That's right. All right.
If nothing else, I have potential.
That's right. We all do.
Right.
We all do. All right. Well, listen, if you'd like to get connected, and let's say you have a story just like William, and you want to get connected with an Americans for Prosperity chapter, send me an email at jeff@americanpotential.com. I'll get you hooked up with a chapter that can help you navigate whatever situation you're in with a barrier erected by government, just like William experienced. Our podcast, we're always looking for those stories. So follow us on YouTube, Twitter, on Facebook, and go to our webpage. You can go there, AmericanPotential.com, if you have a story that you'd like to submit, an idea. Thank you so much for listening. Such an inspiring story of William and the work that he did, not just for himself, but to change the situation for all of those in Iowa who may want to do the same thing and not have that barrier that they had previously. Thanks for joining us on American Potential.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.